This is National Chess Master Al Rats. I'm giving one of my simuls on chess.com, and unfortunately I only have 3 games going. One fellow was here but didn't notice the simul was today, and he was playing somebody else, and if he can get his game over the next few minutes, I'll still play him. I told him that. The guy's got to watch the topic. Okay, let's run through the games. And somebody else I've sent a chat request and a game challenge to is Idle, and I've posted on the video lessons wall, hey, you know, I've sent you a challenge, so come on guys, you want to play, pay attention. Okay, so I'm just sitting here playing my King's Indian attack, same old game, trying to teach you guys and gals a system to use. The first 10 moves are pretty automatic, and if the moment black spends a tempo with h6, I chop that knight off. He's never done that. But I've got my first 10 moves, and I usually follow here with rook e1, and that's what I've done. And he's played an unusual move, b5. What's wrong with that move? Well, first off, it weakens c6 and it weakens c5. Can I do anything about that? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm looking at ways to try to do just that. That's what I'm thinking of. Ideally, I'd like to get a knight there, but I'm not sure how I do it. I could play b4 myself. That'll secure b5. Then I can play knight b3 and knight c5. He gets control of c4. Oh, somebody sent me a chat. Who's sending me a chat? You already played me. You can't play me, but I'll accept your chat. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. So b4. He can take, pawn takes now. But how does he get a knight to c4? Well, he can do it by way of moving his queen out of the d6 square. Just a second. Okay, anyway, okay, so I'm working on ways to knock the list down. I've got another national master that's going to come in and help with the game load. He can play people on my list. You can play him in lieu of playing me, and if he doesn't get you guys to show up, then maybe the people that have already played me, he'll play some of you, but he doesn't want to. He wants to start with about 3 games. Okay, so anyway, close that. Chat, I don't need that. Okay, so b4. But I have ways to combat c4. Now, how can he combat c5? He can put his knight on d7. Then my bishop can come back to e3. I don't have to trade it off. Or I could just trade it off, and that's one less piece. But I like to get a tempo for it when I can. What if he plays d4? That's the proverbial fly in the ointment. b4, d4. Okay, that's thematic. If I take on d4, I've lifted the protection of b4. I'm not going to rush with b4 just yet. Maybe he's trying to play b5 and expend a couple tempos. Let's see. I could play h3 with the idea that my bishop will go to e3 and I'll keep it, and that'll help keep an eye on c5. h3 does weaken g3. Is he trying to play b4? If he wants to play b4 and chop my pawn on c3, that's fine with me. I'm going to go ahead and give h3 a try here. Okay, now queen's gone to c7. Okay, so what's happened here? I haven't shown this game yet. I got a little desperado tactic in. A desperado is when a piece is going to be lost, you just throw it away for what you can get. Okay, and here he stopped my bishop g5 move. So here I tried something a little different, trying to capitalize on getting this long diagonal for my bishop. Potential weaknesses on the knight on c6, and so here I'm going to be keeping my dark squared bishop, and I decided to you know, go ahead and get the knight on c4. That's a good square for it, and he reinforced it. Now I played b3, and I don't mind knight to c3. I can play queen c2, and there's sometimes in some positions there's a trick. Well, actually there was a trick here. I was looking at knight before. Queen c2, wait, knight c3, queen c2, knight d4. Okay, now the point is, if I play queen takes c3, knight takes e2 check. Okay, I was just looking at knight before, so he can play it. Now knight takes, and we may get the same desperado tactic. Here, I'll show you what happens. Let's see. I'm kind of playing a hedgehog style, planning to put the queen on c2, and he plays here. And now here comes the desperado. Knight takes e6. He doesn't have time to play bishop takes f1 because of knight takes d8. And if he tries queen d5 to protect his bishop, then I give knight c7 check. So let's back this up, and let's try to, oops, it's going, no, that's what he did. Let's see, the moment I played b3, wait, yeah, b3, okay, I don't have analysis board here. Knight d4, no, knight c3, queen c2, knight d4. Now when I play knight takes, I'm threatening to take this knight. If he guards the knight with pawn takes, I get bishop takes. So now he goes ahead and plays bishop takes, and wait, I'm losing my line of thought here. Sorry. Okay, knight c3, queen e2, queen c2, knight d4, knight takes, bishop takes. Well, I can do that knight takes e6 here. And I'm on this bishop on, wait, I keep losing the position in my mind. I'm just distracted. Knight c3, queen c2, knight d4, knight takes, bishop takes. Okay, his bishop is on the square. Okay, knight takes e6. Now, he can't play queen d5 for the same reason, so he could play knight takes e2 check, but then my queen takes on e2, and his queen is still loose, and I'm going to get that bishop. And he's will have lost both of his knights, and I'll have an extra piece. Because I'll still have my knight on c4 and my bishop on c1. Okay, so that doesn't work. But on knight c3, I can also play queen d2. That's a possibility. Anyway, let's go forward. Bishop e7, attacking that. Now here comes the desperado, and now it's my move. Now I've got a weakness. It's not going anywhere. I would like to pile up on it. The best place to attack it with a knight is f4, and that's several moves away. But I'm going to play my knight to e5 here. I could put the bishop on e5, but I don't know if that really does me a lot of good. The idea of knight e5 is I want to play queen c4 and then consider knight g6 and back to f4. Okay, so that's done. Now, okay, now I can work on e3 a little bit. Now let's see, bishop or not e3, c5. I'm thinking about bishop e3. So I mix squares up when I'm analyzing. I could play knight b3 here right now. that takes the knight off the normal path that it travels. Usually I put it on F1, and then it goes to E3. But I'm just picturing the knight on E3 in my mind. Could he play D4 in that position? Probably so. So we're a little off the beaten path here. I'm going to go ahead and play knight B3 and await developments. Okay, now let's talk about one more game. It's barely started. We're still in the... I'm still my first 10 moves, and I'm ready for E4. So this system works. The only time I've spent is from the increment and flicking back between the other games. So just get rid of the bishop. Oh, he's moved. Come back to that. Finish off this game. Bishop takes. Maybe I did finish it. Let's see. Bishop takes. See, I'm still in the system, and my next move is going to be E4. And yeah, he did move. Okay, so now E4. He'll probably play bishop H7. He might stop and take first. And we just play chess. See what happens. Okay, so 3 games going. Time, he's taking his time. He spent 25 minutes. He's gotten 6 back on the increment. He spent 31 minutes for 12 moves. That's good. Okay, that's a good solid 2.5 minutes plus per move. Okay, so as expected, he put his bishop on H7. Now I play rook E1. That's often my 12th move. I've discovered it just works out. He's taking his time. Kind of, let's see, 12 minutes plus 8 on the increment, 20 minutes for 17 moves. No, he's not going as slow as he should. Okay, so now the D file is open. This happens a lot. And we're just playing a game of chess. I can't push the E pawn, my queen hangs. You know, this has basically been old book. How often can you find an opening where you can always play your first 11 moves and then still have an idea what to do next? It's a lot of work. I run into a lot of different defenses. I'm gonna, if you're a Diamond member, you can access my game history and see quite a few. I don't have all my over the board games that I've used this uploaded, but there are some in the forums in the video lessons group. I'm simply going to have to collect all these games and get them organized and maybe publish a pamphlet on this and offer it for sale at a reasonable price. Because, you know, if whatever you play is white, if black plays it correctly, he's going to equalize, okay? But if your opponent really knows the line and you don't as well as he, suddenly, you know, your advantage of white on the first move is vanished, okay? So doesn't give white any more than an even game, but there's a method to its madness. White does a lot of piece maneuvering, trades into endings, and often does quite well in them. You give up the bishop pair the way I play it, but I found it's easier to teach, easier to understand, and a lot of these positions end up closed and the knights dominate. And one of the first simul games, let me think, who was it against? Romanik 666, I think. He drew the game. He played a great defense. He took his time. But I had this wonderful knight that was just against a bad bishop, and my knight was just hopping all over the board, trying to enter here, trying to enter there. He had all these wonderful squares to go to, but I just couldn't make any progress. But I remember that game. It was a lot of fun to play. Okay, so now, one drawback with playing knight d7 for him is that he's taking a little pressure off e4. And sometimes, like when I go into the maneuvering, if I play like knight f1, knight e3, my silly pawn on e4 falls under prey because the knight and the bishop are on it. But now, what's kind of interesting is I can make a tempo move I can play knight dc4 here, and that tempos the bishop, threatens to win it, and he needs to find a new square for it, and he may put it on c5. I could kick b4 and back it up to e7. So we'll just await developments here. I'll play that move, and okay, so 25 minutes plus 6.5, 31 minutes for 13 moves. He's doing fine. He's taking his time. He's taking his time. We decided that. This one's going a little quicker, but he's starting to slow down now. So he spent 15 minutes, 23 minutes on 16 moves. A little too quick. You know, it's barely a minute and a half a move. 90-30 gives you a good 2.5 minutes per move, and you need to use it. Okay, so I don't know whatever happened to Pulsator 9000. I sent you a chat request. It looks like they're not even online anymore, so you didn't stick around. But anyway, it's on record that I sent you a challenge. I posted it on in the group wall, and I'll post it in the topics. So maybe you weren't available for a long game tonight. Okay, so as I say here, my idea is to bring the queen up to c4, good square for it. Maybe I'll try to play a4 too. Well, that gives up b4. So I'm always thinking of squares, but it restrains him from playing b5. But then again, if he plays b5, he weakens c5. So, you know, you always think about these things and you're going to do fine. Okay, now he took on e4. Now maybe he's going to rip my knight off because it's a dangerous piece. But that puts my queen with a tempo on his pawn on b5, puts me on a nice diagonal towards his king, and I can retreat my bishop to e3, where he's pretty safe, and then consider moves like bishop f1, and you know, if white ends up with the two bishops in this position, it's pretty good too. You know, it's when it's closed, it's great. We have two knights against a bishop and knight, but or two knights, a bishop against knight and two bishops. It's rare that I get the two bishops, but I do, and you miss the knight, but if you work the bishops right, you really find that they're a lot of fun. Okay, so he's attacking my knight. So I don't have time for queen c. Well, actually, I do have time for queen c4. It's a little trick. Because if bishop takes e5, I have queen takes e6 check. And just have to make sure I don't fall to prey to some little counter tactic. So queen c4. Knight has to guard the pawn. Then I can plunk the knight into g6. I'm not certain I want to put it on g6 because with his bishop on that diagonal, it's gonna rip it off if it hits f4. So I may consider dropping it back to f3. And like I say, the e6 pawn is just going to stay weak. So queen c4. If bishop takes knight, it's just a simple tactic. I play queen takes e6 check, and he gets out of check, and I take the bishop on e5, and I've won a second pawn. So queen c4. Okay, got him thinking. And everybody else, you know, you need to show up when I give these simuls. So anyway, like I say, I have another National Master to come in and help out, and you know, we'd love to play you guys all the time, but I'm trying to get everybody one game where they get the experience of playing a long time control game against me. Okay, stop with a check. Let's just get the king off that diagonal and call that a day. Okay, so king g1. Okay. Can he play b5 now? Well, he's just going to drop the pawn on e6. Maybe he's going to play queen d5 or knight d5 here. Not sure what he's trying to do. If he plays queen d5, I probably don't want to take his bishop. Let's see now. Here's where it's time to get the queen off this diagonal. By that I mean the b1h7 diagonal. I can tickle the b pawn. He might play b5, but then my knight goes to e3, which I'm accustomed to, and nothing's guarding the pawn. Bishop takes. Whoops. See, it's easy to drop a pawn here. Let's see. Another idea is to restrain that b pawn from advancing and play knight d4. The purpose of a move like that is to invite black to advance either as d or as c or a z pawn. Advancing either one creates a certain weakness in his position. Ideally, white likes to get the d5 and f5 squares under his control for his knights, and have one sitting on d5 and the other on f5, and that happens sometimes, but only happens if black will push both of those pawns, and he's played not to push them. Another move I can play, which is logical, is rook a d1. What rook a d1 does is it pins his knight, and maybe I would consider a move like knight d6. Rook a d1, he'll play queen e7. That's to be expected. And now, let's see, what if I play queen b3 then? Answer b5 with knight d2. Yuck. I want to get that knight to e3. That's why I want to move the knight on f3 so that I can secure that pawn on e4. Let's take a look. What if he does advance a pawn? Okay, we'll pick a pawn. We'll look at each. Knight d4. Now, there's no move making him advance a pawn, but we're trying to provoke it. Okay, knight d4. e5. If I can play knight f5 right away. And if bishop takes, pawn takes, and my pawn on f5 is doubled, but it's pretty safe. His bishop is not active. Mine just got some activity. And if he plays c5, that knight on d4 can go to b5, attacking his bishop, threatening to settle on d6. Now he could also play something like knight e5. That puts the question to my knight, and I don't really want to trade. I'm liking rook a d1 a little better, but queen e7. Then he brings his rooks over. But I'm accustomed to this happening, having black oppose rooks, and often seeing all the heavy pieces get traded. Then we go into a minor piece ending. I've seen all this. Another maneuvering method I use to help secure e4 is putting this knight on d2. That would certainly free the queen to b3. But at some point I need this rook developed, so I'm just going to go ahead and follow common logic and develop the rook. Okay, so what's happened here? He didn't rip my knight. Is he threatening any kind of penetration? Okay, queen d3, queen takes, rook takes. And I can't play bishop f1 because the knight on f3 hangs. If I play rook d1, he can't give up his queen for one rook. I can play bishop f1 directly. I'm not really threatening his b pawn, although I guess trading it for my h pawn would be a reasonable exchange. If I put my bishop on e3, queen d3, queen takes, rook takes, then I can play bishop f1 because he can't play rook takes f3. And okay, so bishop e3 is starting to look more like the move than rook d1. Although rook d1 ends up, he's got to get his queen out of there. He could put it on, if he puts it on e7, I have a pin. The bishop is pinning the knight. But here I've taken the steps to preserve that bishop, so eventually when he plays h6, I'm going to retreat it. So let's see. But then again, rook ad1, queen e7, I have to come up with a move next. If I play bishop e3, you know, I've given up my pin. And in some cases, my e4 pawn will come under fire. So let's see, can he attack e4, any other piece? No. So therefore the answer is bishop e3. And I'm trying to do something on the c5 square. So bishop takes b3, he could do that. Queen takes b3. Now he could play queen d3. But then I can move my knight to something like g5 or even d2, and I've got the hatches battened down on e4. That's one way. There's other ways. Okay, it's expected he played the queen there. And now queen b3 is met by b5, and when I play knight b3, well, I'm gonna, you know, bring it back to d2. I was talking about that. My idea is then to play knight d4 and pressure. Let's see, queen b3. You could also play queen c5, but then I can take his pawn. He takes my knight. I take his knight or his bishop, and all kinds of things. So queen b3 is starting to look right. Because I'm not quite sure where I want to put this knight yet. I like the option of maybe going to d4, so I don't want to. Okay, so here I'll bring it back, and then the idea is to play knight d4 or induce him to play e5, and then I've got my f5 square, and then I start maneuvering the knights around a little bit and have some fun. Okay, so we'll give queen b3 a try. The alternative is double the rooks, but I play rook d2, he plays rook ad8. I double rooks, and he goes and moves his knight, and I'm not really making any progress. I'm trying to induce a weakness in his position. Okay, so he did play his queen there. I don't really want to trade queens and repair his pawns. I like that pawn being isolated. So I'm gonna, let's see, knight f3. Now it doesn't have a whole lot of scope after this, but it will. Okay, knight f3. If he wants to trade, I'll take back with the d pawn and play on the d file. Okay, so knight f3. Okay. So everybody's thinking. I got them all thinking. My good, he's taking his time. But let's talk about the time control for a moment. 90 moves 30 minutes. I'm sorry, 90 moves at 30-second increment. Oh, he played that. Didn't expect that one. Okay. I can pin that knight. With queen a3 or queen b4. Let's see. I was trying to induce him to play b5. Okay, so I'll just drop the queen back. Plan didn't work. I'm happy if he takes on e4, but I'm threatening b4, trying to induce a weakness. So knight e30, essentially the way they determine what the e time is, you take 2/3 of the increment and add it to the minutes. So you have 110 minutes. Technically, most games, there's a reason that 40 moves is used in chess for a lot of things. Over-the-board tournaments, run time controls, a lot of them, 40 moves in so many minutes. Like FIDE's time control, 40 moves, 90 minutes, and then I think sudden death 1 hour. Or there's 40 moves, 2 hours, sudden death 1 hour. The old original FIDE time control, back in the days before, or Fischer and Bobby Fischer and before, was 40 moves in 2.5 hours, and they would adjourn after 5 hours of play. My very first FIDE rated tournament back in 1982, Futurity, where I earned my FIDE rating, was playing under these time controls. And if you reach move 40 and say one person has 20 minutes on his clock, you don't adjourn at move 40, you keep playing. But if you want to sit and invest a little bit of time and then seal a move, at 5 hours you do this. And then the secondary time control, 16 moves every hour. And they got rid of this mainly because, well, the old days you adjourn the game, the player would go to bed and he'd have something called a second, a trusted compatriot or another talented player, and he would look at your game overnight. And he'd wake up in the morning and he'd show you everything he uncovered. Okay. In the case of the old USSR, they had a whole country working together to help their players, and because computers got to where they could analyze out positions to the nth degree, they want the games completed in one sitting now. So their current time control, 40 moves in 90 minutes with a 30-second increment. And I think sudden death 30, I think, but a little quicker than it used to be, but that's the going rate now. But let's talk about, see, we don't have a secondary time control on the internet. That's one of my gripes. They can digitize these things. The chess clock is built into the interface. You don't have to notate. It records your moves for you. Why can't they come up with a time control or a secondary time control, like 40 moves, 90 minutes, increment 30, secondary time control, game 30 or 30 moves in 30 minutes, then you make that, you get another more time added on. Because, okay, but let's do the math. Let's go back to what I said. The average game lasts about 40 minutes, and I just proved why with all the evidence. But a good thing is to note is, even though games will go beyond 40 moves, for the most part, a large number of them are over by move 40, and you can prove this if you visited a large over-the-board tournament and look at the time controls, determine what time of the day time control will fall, assuming all the round is started on time, and say you're playing a 40 move and 2 hour time control, and the round starts at 12 o'clock noon. Well, if you come back at 4 o'clock, you'll see a large percentage of the games are done, and then it's going to dwindle even faster. So objectively speaking, you have 110 minutes to make 40 moves, and then you're going to have a 30-second increment to play on. So just do the math. 110 divided by 40. It gives you almost 3 minutes a move. Almost. Not quite, but almost. And that's why these people, like I said, they need to take time. Now, Mayadasan is taking his time. He spent 34 minutes on the game. Plus, he's received 8 minutes back of increment time. So he spent 42 minutes and played 16 moves. So 16 times 3 would be what, 48? He's playing about on the right pace. So essentially, we're going to get down to about move 40, and he'll be low on time, but he'll still have his 30-second increment. So are you comfortable playing an ending with a 30-second increment? If you're not, then just play just a little bit quicker and have an extra 10 minutes on your clock. Complete 40 moves in 80 minutes. Plus, you're going to get 20 minutes back on the clock for those 40 moves. So 40 moves in 100 minutes gives you 2.5 minutes a move, and you'll reach move 40 with 10 minutes on your clock, and then you'll so at any given time you need to take 3, 4, 5 minutes, you've got it on the clock, and you still can gain some time, because a lot of times in the ending your moves are easy, they're forced. Now, might he play a5 here? I'm just thinking of this while I'm waiting for him to move. I may have just wasted a move here. He might. No, I just didn't even consider him playing knight c5. But, I don't see everything. I'm a little, never quite totally got used to playing on a 2D set. And that's what, when you're on the internet, that's what you're stuck with. Ideally, I would like to have a board set up next to me. And I do this when I play a one game, a standard time control game, but I can't do it with a simul with 3 games. Okay, so a6, he's trying to Push for b5. Now I have an interesting move here. I can play e4. E4 attacks his queen. If he trades queens, I can take back with the b pawn, opening up that file. I'm threatening a fork with e5. Which he has to deal with. And because if I take with the d pawn, I drop the pawn on e4. Although I could play rook e1, attacking the knight, forcing it back. Can't wait, go to g5 because I'm going to get double pawns, and I win back my pawn, but then I'm trading a good pawn for a bad pawn. The pawn on e6 is already weak. So what I'm trying to say here is, okay, the e6 pawn is weak. If I leave it there, it remains weak, okay? And I don't really want to trade one of my good pawns for it, although it is to my advantage to do so, but in a way, it's kind of like giving a little bit back to your opponent. You can afford to do this if you're completely winning. Like if you're a piece up, you don't always have to play the best moves. I mean, if I'm a piece down against a 1600 player in a tournament, I fully expect to lose. I'll do my best to not lose, but I'm saying I fully expect to lose. And the same thing is true here. If I give, I can't really, I can afford to give a little back, but I can't keep giving it back. And the tougher your opponent, the more likely you're going to get stung when you do continue with the second best move. So e4, queen takes. Now I can take with the pawn. One thing I like about it is I'm getting pawns on light squares, and his bishop is becoming a serious target. Or not a serious target, a serious weakness. His bishop will not be attacking any of my pawns, and mine may very well be attacking his. As I was saying earlier, a b5 move weakens c5, but here it's not so drastic. Now I could play a4. That puts a pawn on a white square. I was talking about that earlier. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and play a4. I mean, e4 is clever in its own way. Or I'll just discuss it. e4, queen takes. Now, if I take with the d pawn, he can play knight takes e4. I can plant my rook on e8 or e1, and if you notice, this knight can't go forward. Oh wait, I'm hanging f3. See, I'm missing these things. Okay, so I'm not going to play e4 at all. I'm good at missing one movers. Okay, he's worried about c5. Okay, good. You should be. Now, what do I want to do? What I want to do is tempo his queen here, since he's closed off the d file, and then I'm going to redeploy my bishop to f1 and try to pressure him in some way, shape, or form. Rook a d1. Okay, now let's see. Now he didn't play that. He didn't play a5. That might have been a good move. So here his threat is to take a rook and expose the weakness of the pawn on e4, right? So if I play b4, he could play rook takes, and if I take with the queen, he plays knight takes e4. If I take with the rook, he plays knight takes e4. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier and consider putting the knight on d2, although I could put him on a d4. And one thing I didn't like about it was his knight going to e5. So now he doesn't have a knight e5. So I'm going to put this knight on d4. Who's sending me a chat? Let's see, knight d4. I'll check that in a moment. a5. I don't mind that so much. I can still play Well, not my SMS. Who's sending me a chat? It's not a chat request, it's a friend's request. Rachel Rima has requested to add you as a friend. I accept all friend requests, unless you annoy me. I have one person annoying me, not you, Rachel. I don't know who you are. But always wants to chat when I come to live chats, and I always tell him, I'm working. Leave me a message. He keeps it up. If I say, what do I always tell you when you send me a chat request? When I'm in live chats, I'm working. I do not like to be disturbed when I work. Do not send me requests in live chats. And I declined his friend's ad. That's the one person I declined a friend ad to. That way you know I'm annoyed. I had you blocked once too because you kept annoying me. But he's 13 years old, so we forgive him. Okay, queen went back to f8. Now, what was I saying I was going to do? I was going to... Interesting idea, sack the exchange on d7. Okay, rook takes d7, bishop or rook takes, then I play bishop c5. And he gets to step into a gruesome pin, put his knight on e7. Have I gained anything with that? You know, a lot of people wouldn't look at that move, but you know, you're looking at the defender of c5. It'd be great if I could stick a bishop on c5 and corner his queen, but knight takes c5. Now, I don't think rook takes d7 is worth anything, but I'm going to look. Okay, rook takes. He can take back with the bishop or the knight or the rook. Okay, let's look at the rook. Now, to justify this, I need to play bishop c5, right? And now unless he wants to give material back, and that's one drawback, he can just give the exchange back. And what have I gained? I've gained him the bishop pair that I've taken so much time to keep on the board. So sometimes, you know, the method to success is to just delay that idea and try to encroach some other way. Now, here's an interesting point. Is with this formation, his queen has one square, e7. He chose not to go there. But because his knight's now on d7, he can't move it without having to walk into some kind of a pin. So this is the kind of position I can just improve my position with. Just sit on it. Now what I'm looking at is bishop f1. And as I said earlier, I'm not I am threatening it because I'll be on the knight. So I'm just going to improve the position of this bishop, because one thing about it, it often does come into play on this diagonal. f1, a6. And I'm going to do that. Now, one thing I just want to think about before I get there. Another possibility I can play is knight g5, trying to corral his bishop. I think if I do that, I would do that after he played an f5 move, because I was just wondering what if he plays f5, which could activate my bishop on this long diagonal, but bishop f1 or knight g5. Knight g5 seems to, well, you know, bishop f, he could drop his bishop on c4. Well, that may not be any good, and it takes me 2 moves to collect it. Now I'm just going to improve the position of my bishop and wait developments. Okay, he took, and now which way to take back? Okay, where can his knight bother my weakness on b3 if I take with the d-pawn? Only from a5. And that knight's a long way from getting to a5, but it can get there. Trace a path back. Knight to b7. Well, let's see. Gotta get the knight to c6. Knight d7, b8, c6, a5. Or do I want to take with the C pawn and keep all my pawns intact and try to use the B file? See, the difference is if I play D takes, I'm getting on the D file right away. If I play B takes, I've got a target on B6, but I'm not on that file right away. He does have time to defend that. I've got to think about where I can remaneuver this knight to in any case. It's tempting to take either way. I'm going to take, let's see. But then I'm a pawn up, and if I just liquidate, the game ends quickly. D takes makes sense in that respect, because then I get on the file and start offering trades, and I can handle the weakness on B3. Okay, so I'll play there, and he's starting to take his time. He's spent 27 minutes plus 10 back on the increment, 37 minutes for 21 moves. Not quite slow enough, but you know, he didn't take it on that one critical move when I had the Desperado trick, and that's what's got him in this pickle. See, boops. And I saw it pretty much right away. I didn't start the recording yet. I found it's better to wait to start the recording. I can still cover everything I'm talking about. Oh wow, rook B8. That's an odd move. What was my last move? Knight D4. Okay, now is time to drive that knight out and be done with him. Okay, so B4. Yeah, B4. Okay. I guess he's planning B5, but he really can't plan it because my knight's going to take on C6. So he's definitely taking his time. And let's see, the Simul started just a few minutes after 5 o'clock. I was just a couple minutes running behind. And the video is, so the Simul's an hour and 15 minutes old, and the video is only 47 minutes old. I started the video about the half-hour mark. Yesterday when was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, 24 hours ago, I ran a Simul. One game actually ended before I started the video. Okay, so here's an interesting thing about exchange sack. Rook takes D7 again. Then instead of putting the bishop on C5, I put the knight on C5. The idea is to undermine all kinds of things. The pawn on A6. If I can take it with the knight, the knight's menacing C7. Might win all three of his pawns. Then again, I might not. But those three pawns there on the queen side are pretty weak. Somebody clicked. Let me just... A5. Okay, keeping the status quo, but you've taken A5 from your knight. You get B4, but you're not going to get the knight to B4. I can rip that knight almost in any time. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to develop my rook and attack your bishop. Okay, back to this game. Let me see if I'm on the move here. Did he click? Yeah, he did. Okay, they both moved, and somebody else moved too. Okay. I can get on the 7th rank here. I'm going to come back on this. Let me catch up on... Let's see. That's my move on every game, isn't it? Let's see. I'm clicking. I'm ticking there. I'm going way too quick. Let's see. Well, one reason I'm going quick here is he's going slow. And the reason he's taking the less time, that's where I spent the most. Okay. I think it's my move on every game. So that was my task, and I didn't confirm it. Yep, I'm ticking, and I'm ticking. So we'll start with the game where I have the least time, and that's this one. Okay. I can put the knight on E5 again. I can take his knight and put my rook on either d6 or d7, depending on how he recaptures. I'd probably recapture with the rook, then my rook goes to d7. But I don't really like having to give up my bishop just so easily. Again, it's giving up a little bit. And winning the b6 pawn doesn't really mean a whole lot, even though it weakens a5 and c5. I'm not doing anything with my pawns. My extra pawn is on b3, and it's quite backwards. So the way to play this is with active pieces. So first step, I'm going to get my rooks in action. Now let's see, between these I have 72 minutes and I have 79 minutes. That means I move there. That means I'm going to work on this one. Okay. He's stopping knight c5, but at the same time he's made a little bit of a weakness, a6. The knight on c6 is not covered, but I don't have a way to get after it. One interesting move I have is to play the bishop to g5. What does that do? Invites him to play f6. Then I put my bishop back on e3. Now, did I gain anything with that? He's protecting his e5 pawn with his f6 pawn, but the scope of his dark squared bishop is reduced. Is that worth it? Maybe not. Let's see. How can I use my knight on f3? I was talking about that earlier. Knight h2, g4. Is it threatening to go anywhere? Let's see, f6 and h6 really leading to anything. And go back to the knight g5 idea. That's going to force his bishop off. And I get the bishop pair for what it's worth. I get the light squares. Another thing is double rooks. Let's see. Knight g5, it just takes two moves to do that. That's what I don't like about it. What if I play rook d2? I mean, knight g5, that's what I mean by taking two moves. Knight to g5 and then capturing on e6 just to get the bishop pair. But what does he do? He has to find a move. The rules of chess say he has to move too. And he may very well take my knight on b3 and my knight's sitting there on g5. What's it doing? Yeah. Pressuring f7. Well, he's got that covered. So rook d2, he could take his, if he takes his knight on d7 off the file, he gives up c5. Then maybe an exchange sack might have more merit. You just have to wait developments, you're playing with very little and you're waiting to see what your opponent does. And the good opponents are going to find good moves, and the bad opponents are going to find bad moves, and those in between are going to find in between moves. Okay, so he brought his knight back, and knight e5, bishop rips it. I'll get the double pawn. Okay, I've taken the heat off e4, so maybe I can't push it now. I'm just trying to think of ways to push it, but before I push it, I have to get the queen off the deck, and also where do I put the queen? That's what I'm working on. Queen b3, would he try c5? That gives me knight b5. I put the queen on b3 before. Let's try it again, even though it's not attacking the b pawn. I'm just trying to get the queen off that diagonal. Okay, queen b3, and guess what? It's everybody's move. Okay. So, excuse me. Neither side's pieces have gone much beyond the third rank here. I have a pawn on e4, he has a pawn on e5 and b5. Although pieces have crossed the no man's land of the fourth, between the fourth and fifth rank. My bishop did go to g5 earlier, but I saved it. I brought it back. When we're kind of playing trench warfare here, we call it. That's when you're most of your pieces are behind your pawns. Here we only have a couple pieces in front of pawns. The knight's on the far side of the queen side. Actually, my other knight's in front of a pawn on f3. Now I look at it. Just playing a waiting move. Now let's see. What if he plays f5 now? The idea is to play f4. Well, we let him. Knight f5 might be a good move, so I wasn't thinking of that. But then again, I can always take it. Okay, knight there. Okay, is he threatening anything? The answer is no, so I just double rooks. And my knight's tied down to this square, but let's see. Rook d1, you could try to get cute with e5, threatening a fork, but I take with the bishop. And if he plays knight takes, I play knight takes, and he's no longer attacking f2, so I could also play h3 and just drive his knight back whence it came. But you know, let him get his knight back on his own. I'm gonna play rook d1. Okay, so he played there, rook d8. Now I'm gonna play a4 with the idea of playing a5. Because I'm kind of, you know, here we're kind of like no man's land. I've got my turf here, he's got his turf there. I'm just trying to increase the space advantage. Okay, so you played there, that was your idea. Okay, well, I'm happy to trade pieces. Even though that brings your knight back into the game, I didn't spend a tempo with h3. I've got control of the open file, and I'm going to stick this rook on d6. Okay, knight b6. I'm going to play knight a5 here. That's one of those positions where I might be trying to trade two minors for the rook, but I get a couple pawns, and my queenside pawns would be very advanced. You know, here's an interesting thing. I mean, I can look at this guy who says his rating's 1192, but you don't want to look at someone's rating and make your decision on how you play the game. This guy's a fish. You know, we're all fish. There's always a bigger fish, no matter how good you are. Unless you're become Magnus Carlsen, somebody's better than you. Sorry, just the way it is. And if you want to get better at chess, you just have to play the best moves and not the ratings. So the idea of knight a5, well, first idea is it avoids exchanges. Second idea is it ties his rook down to b8. For him to kick it out, he's got to weaken c6. So let's see, if I play the knight to a5, it might be a position where I don't mind if he plays bishop takes a5, simply because I get a lot of pressure. I don't know, it just looks like fun, the kind of move I want to play. So knight a5. Okay, so now he bothered that. This gives me a second pawn. Okay, I'll take it. So now I'm up 2 pawns. Okay, up 2 pawns. And let's see. Got everybody thinking. So the video is now 1 hour old. Okay, wait, he just put his knight there. Okay, where's that knight going? Anywhere I should worry about? I'm going to double rooks on the 7th, or at least try to. Okay, so rook d7. Got to take control of the 7th rank while it's there. I don't worry so much about the pawn on b6. I don't want to trade it for my e-pawn. Okay, so now I double rooks, make him trade, because I'm threatening a mate in 3. Rook takes g7, rook h7, rook d g7. And if you would like to trade both rooks, that's fine with me. And conversely, even if you end up winning my pawn on b3, although I'm not sure exactly how you do that. Okay, so he put his rook over there. Now do I want to play knight takes c6 in any type of continuation? Or knight takes c6, pawn takes, knight takes c6, attacks his queen. His queen backs up, I take on b8. I've got his bishop on h7 effectively shut out. Let's see. Knight takes c6, bc, knight takes c6, queen, maybe f6. Knight takes b8. Oh, that's going to lose. Where is it? No, he's got an extra rook on the back rank. You see, knight b takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen f6, knight takes rook, rook takes. Not threatening rook d8 check. Could put the queen back on f8 so that restrains me from pushing c4 because b4 would fall. Of course, another thing to do is that's not going away. I can just improve my position here and double rooks. Let's do that. Let's just double rooks and see what he's got up his sleeve. Okay. I offered a bishop trade there. Okay, well. I play knight g5 here. Knight g5. Do that. Oh, very clever. Let's see. King has to come up. Guard the knight. Okay, so you want one pawn back. No big deal. I traded your bad pawn for my good pawn. So let's see, now his knight's gone back. Now, did I care if he took that pawn? No, I didn't, because let's see, rook d1, bishop takes, pawn takes. If b6, he's weakening c6. Okay, so double rooks. Okay, he took, I take. I don't think that helps you. You're going to lose your pawn. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook d7. Okay. You just moved right back. So rook d7. And I nurse 2 3-on-2 pawn majorities. Okay. So time-wise, I haven't taken my walk yet. I have to get up and stretch my legs. Okay, so I just take this, and he did take. Okay, there we go. Queen e7. Now I take your bishop. Okay. Rook d6. If rook b2, I take on b6 first. Okay, I think your pawns are going to start falling here. So here's an interesting imbalance. Now you could play knight c5. But then I can pin it again, you know. Then the queen a3, I was looking at pinning it earlier. The queen a3 kind of makes some sense. So, oh, knight f8. Okay, now, interesting imbalance of pawns. Very interesting. Where's his knight trying to go? To g6, to e5? Not sure where his knight's trying to go. What if I play queen c4 here? The idea is to then play a6 and start undermining his pawns. C4 the best square for the queen? That's a good question. Let's see, a6, pawn takes, knight takes c6. Oh, that's dumb. Nothing's guarding the knight. The queen's hanging. But wait, no, maybe it's not dumb. a6, pawn takes, knight takes. Attacking the queen. If he takes my queen, I take his queen with check. Aha, maybe a6 is playable. a6, he needs to play b6. Can't take it. He can't take my pawn. a6, b6, or b takes. Now you have knight takes c6. Rook takes c6. I play queen takes b8. Winning the exchange. So a6, he needs to play b6. And hey, then I can play a5. Do it all over again. I like that move. Interesting move here. a6. Otherwise, he plays a6. He probably should have played a6. a6. He'll play b6, I'll play a5, and he'll play b5. Well, we'll see what happens. Okay, he took that. Now, do I have time for a desperado of my own? He's going to get a desperado. Let's see. Well, I guess not. Okay, rook takes. Now I get this pawn. Okay, so essentially this is a elementary win. Your king can't cross the barrier. I'm going to stake out some territory with my pawns over here. Get them running. Okay. Very interesting move, a6. Very interesting. It just sort of looked like fun letting him take on a5 with the bishop. But I guess he should have played a6, so he didn't have time to really think about that. Okay, h5. Now your pawn's weak. So I'm going to bring my king up and play him to e3 and see what you do. Right now my rook's staying put. It went there. You're trying to check me. Would you do that? How about if I fork your pawns? Okay, now you took there. Now, how close am I to an exchange sack? Not close at all. So let's double and then think about tripling. Okay, check. King up. Okay. Do I want to take on A5 and let him take on B3? Then I play King G5 and he puts his rook on F3. Here, I'll also play F3 here myself. Just run him out of moves. F3. You might play Rook D4 check, and I can put my king on G5, and it takes away a Rook G4 check motive. It makes G3 a little weaker, but I can live with that. Okay, so here we go again. A5. Same ideas in mind. Okay, so here you played there. Now I get to force your king back. Rook take. Well, I can check first, but let's just take the pawn. You're going to take my pawn on B3. Oh, you're going to play there. I thought you'd take the pawn on B3. Okay, now I save my pawn on B3, and your rook's loose. Okay. Okay, so offer a rook trade and reactivate my rook. Okay, Rook D5. And I'll just park him right here. Keep your king cut off. And let's see, where do I want to go with the king? Just go up here. Keep your king out, boxed out. Okay, so let's see what's happening. I played there. Didn't quite expect that trick. Now I can pin that knight, get my queen off the dangerous file. I mean, not pin the knight, pin the pawn. I can put the knight on B5 and step into a pin of my own. Clear case of pandemonium, as they say. Queen A3. Okay, Queen A3, and I put his rook there. Now I just start advancing this pawn and put my rook behind it, and your rook gets stuck. You get a check here, no big deal. He took it. As I say, I'm threatening to run that pawn. Your king can't approach. And when it does, that pawn's going to be on the 7th rank. So I still won't let your king approach. Well, checking doesn't do much good. I'll bring my king back. Okay. Okay, oh, he moved in and let me have C5. Okay, so let's see. Finally I get C5. Do I want it? Where's that knight going on B6? To C4? Let's go attack. Well, wait. He might take my silly pawn on A2. Rook takes, knight takes. somebody gave up. Yeah, Currents gave up without playing on. Okay, so thanks to schedule a lesson soon. I leave Thursday AM with limited time over next several. Oh, he left the chat. Well, okay. Gotta give. He paid for some lessons. I want to give him, get those covered. I'll come back over that. Did I play Queen E3 yet? Yes. Okay. So what games are left? This one and this one. There's 2 games left, and the video is 1 hour and 15 minutes. Let me cover this game, and I'll take a walk. Covered most of this already. He played an early H6, and I went tried to go hedgehog style, and we had this little desperado. If you've gotten this far, you've already seen this. I'm just rushing through. He did win a pawn that I wasn't watching. I didn't see the knight takes E2 trick coming up. See, and King F1 just could end up hanging my knight on F3 and activating his rook. So started to play King F1, or at least point the mouse there, and I'd be careful. But here he's just giving the pawn back, and he's got some play, but you know, he's just dropping too many pawns, and he should have had the B pawn off the board, but he didn't. But he's just down too many pawns. There's not much you can do. Anyway, essentially his rook goes to C8, my rook goes to C3, and he can forestall things with rook C7, but I have tempo moves with my rook, not to mention the fact my other pawns can run. Anyway, thanks for playing, and let's see, do I have to move anywhere? I have to move here where I have 71 minutes, and here where I have 65 minutes. Okay, right. Is it my move on both of them? Yeah, it is. Okay, well, that's fine. No, wait, yeah, it is my move. Now, he saved his rook from the pin. I mean, not from the pin. Now, can I play knight B5 here and bother his rook? I think I can. Knight B5 attacks his rook. And if he goes to D7, I trade rooks. He takes back with the knight, and my knight can take on A7. So knight B5. Okay, I need to stretch. So the video will be quiet. Ooh, tangling up my headphone cord here. I'm waiting for a charger to show up in the mail for my wireless. Well, although I could take the laptop with me, let's do that. Walk. I need to walk. Let me go outside with the laptop. Let me unplug. It's charging, but it's got 100% charged. Here, then I don't have to leave. Okay. I don't have to leave the recording open because I can talk to the microphone. Don't have to break. So, 1 second. Okay, so now I'm outside in 100-degree plus weather. Nice and toasty here where I'm at. You have to do a conversion if you don't use the Fahrenheit scale. Okay, so he's planning to put the knight on C4. I can triple here, and he takes and I take, and I'm doubled on the file. But I'm not really threatening to penetrate anywhere. His pieces are safe. I can trade twice on D8 and send his knight back. Now if I play queen d1, I tempo that knight and bring it back to c6. Not quite sure. Let me just peek at this other game here. Let's see. He did move. Okay, he's going to drop his pawn on a7, I do believe. So rook takes d7. Okay. So I knew doubling rooks there would pay off. Sometimes, you know, you just don't hurry. There's a chapter in Sherezevsky's Endgame book, Endgame Strategy, entitled "Do Not Hurry." It tells you not to rush things. Applies in the ending, and apply in any other time. Okay, the one thing two things I've got going here are, I've got a bishop over knight with pawns on both sides of the board. My e4 pawn isn't optimum for that. I've got pawn weaknesses on the queen side for black. There's a choice between tripling with queen d1 and trading down on d8. Another idea is knight c5. The idea of knight c5 is to pressure a6, but a2 falls. Does that matter? Since I'm getting a great active knight. Let's see. He's trying to get a knight to c4. What if I just slow play it with a3? The purpose of a3 is to secure my pawn on a2. Now if he plays knight c4, then I trade his rook. Okay. He takes. I take his other rook. Takes back with the knight. Then my knight can go to c5. And the drawback is that his queen's now guarding a6. But then maybe I could rip that knight off on c4 and get him into an inferior ending. So a3, knight c4, rook takes d8. He could play knight takes, I can't play knight takes d2. I bring my rook back and take it, and I'm a piece up. Or just take his rook with check and then take his knight. So the alternative is tripling, queen d1, knight c4, rook takes. Rook takes. Let's see, well, queen's one he has to take on d3. I still have the problem with my a-pawn, so I'm thinking a3 is the move. Okay, so a3. And now I win the pawn on a7. I'm threatening a fork, and I'm threatening to put the knight on, by putting the knight on c6. And got a pass pawn, I'm trying to run up the board. Okay, so knight takes a7. He doesn't have a desperado or anything I should worry about, so knight takes a7. Now I get out of this oven that's outside and going back into a nicer conditioned apartment, and continue to play these games. Okay, door's shut, door's locked. Not that anybody want to come in here. I'm not that popular. I don't have fans beating down the door like it was the Beatles. You know, you've got to be very careful. Who are the Beatles, you say? Well, Google them. End of discussion. Okay. So, rook a8. I can put the knight on c6. Does it have a way out? do I have to go back to A8? No, or I think I take on B6 first, and then the knight just goes back to B5, and I keep my passed A pawn. Oh, he disconnected, but he came back. I didn't notice when that happened. So, here we are, June 10th? No, June 9th. I leave for Las Vegas Thursday morning. For those that are within driving distance, come on out. Meet me, say hi. I'll be busy playing, but I'll definitely like to meet you if you come. Okay, knight E5. Okay, where's that knight going I should worry about? C4? Is that his idea to come back and collect the pawn on B6? I think he's attacking my knight. If I gotta make sure I didn't hang that knight. I'm good at that. I'm good at hanging pieces in these simuls. I can take with the pawn. If he takes with the rook, I get knight C8 and I get out that way. If he plays knight C4, I can play queen B3, attacking the knight. And if knight takes B6, knight takes knight C6 again. Okay, if he plays, yeah, rook takes doesn't work, even though my knight gets out by way of B8 or C8. Okay, so there it is. B takes. Time-wise, he's keeping a good pace. He spent 55 minutes on the clock, got 15 minutes back plus, so he spent that's 55 and 15 is 60, no, 70 minutes, 32 moves he took, and that lets me out. Knight C8. Unless I'm missing something, I pick up the exchange. And he's got to be careful where he puts his queen, because rook D8 is a mate in some lines. Although you can't really put his queen anywhere safe where I can do that. Queen A7 allows mate, but it also lets me take his queen. Same with queen B7. Queen C7 covers the square. I'm not going to get a mate here. But I've got a passed pawn about to run. Knight takes. Guard his rook. Knight takes, pawn takes. I shove my pawn to the 7th rank. And I don't think he stops it. And if he plays rook takes A6, I take his queen with check and then pick up his rook. Okay, so here he back to keeping me out of C5. You rascal. Okay. Well, one thing about this is that it's not going away. The C5 square is staying loose. I think he moved. Let me peek back there and I'll come back to this game. Okay, so knight takes. And he took with the queen, and now I shoved the pawn, and I don't think you stop me from queening. Okay, so that leaves this game with Kappa A. The other game will be ending soon, I think. And I'll be playing a one-on-one, trying to end this simul. Okay, so time-wise, he spent a lot of time. That's good. 25 from 90 is 65 minutes, plus he's gotten 11.5 minutes back. He spent 76 minutes for 23 moves. He's taking over 3 minutes a move. So he could be headed for what we call time pressure. I rarely see people in time pressure in these 90-30 games. But you go to a real tournament, and you see them in time pressure all the time. It's because they know how to play chess, and the internet has changed chess. I wrote a blog article about it. Yeah, he gave up. Thanks for the game. So let's back this up. Do a quick run through on this, then focus on the other game. And won't have to come back here. Again, I'm following the basic strategy. I think he played the game well. His knight going back to D7 was a little unique. Here this was over ambitious. I just completely missed knight c5. He should play a5 here, and I think he's got a fine game. Instead, I end up with the pawns running, and I did, and I started taking space. And here the idea, I was considering a sacrifice on c3, on c6, but I wasn't entirely sure. And what I did was I said, well, let's just keep that option open and let's improve the position first. You know, no hurry. It's not going away. But here, I kind of entertained the thought, let him double. But there was one move I overlooked, and that's a6 right here. I'll come back and talk about that in a minute, because now I get a6, and if he plays pawn takes, I have knight takes c6, winning the exchange, because I pick up this queen with check, and then I win the rook on c8. So actually I'd be winning a rook there. So b6, and I get to do it again, and maybe he should have tried b5 here. But I might be playing e5 now, just trying to get some pressure on c6, and he might have to play b5. I think I can play e5, and he's got to be very careful defending that pawn, because the queen goes to d7. I've got moves. Well, knight takes b5. My knight's pinned when it's all said and done. But he just runs into targets, or queen e8. I can take over this diagonal, queen b4, then think about redeploying the knight to b3 and c5. I mean, white's got all kinds of plans here, but c5, I pin it, he guards, I come up here, and I guess he just overlooked that he's lost protection of a7, and now he missed this fork, and there's no way to stop from queening. But the critical move, it seemed, you can look at this on your own, the critical move seemed to be in this position, just play a6. Now, that doesn't mean that you're saving this game by any ways, shape, or form, or means, but I've got to come up with a plan. Well, actually, you know what I've got is I've got a desperado here. Knight takes e6. I'm just seeing that now. Was it there earlier? Okay, there. See, it doesn't have time for a6. See, I didn't even see this. If a6, I play knight takes e6, and so let's just take a look at that. We'll call this one a game. Knight takes. He needs to save his knight, but where does he put it? How about f6? Okay, now he's counterattacking this pawn. Yeah, maybe well, he's going to step into a pin. If he takes this pawn, he's got knight c5. No, he doesn't have knight c5 because my knight is guarding my queen. So I go here and f5 and f3, and he loses a piece. I think that's accurate. Okay, thanks so much, Maya Dassen, for the game, and look forward to playing again sometime. Okay, now back to this. We'll finish this simul with this game. To triple or not, or to trade or not. Well, rook takes, rook takes. Rook takes, queen d2. And I'm going to keep him out of c4. You know, I've found experience that these endings are usually good. It's okay to trade the heavy stuff. So I'm just on instinct, I'm going to do this. I'm going to liquidate try to liquidate queens and rooks and then play a minor piece ending. Keep him out of c4. Although I suppose, well, let's see. Rook takes, rook takes. Okay, rook takes. I take. Could also put queen d2 that or d1. That makes more sense. And answer knight c4 with rook takes. I can always rip that knight off. So I'm just looking at method of him trying to put the knight on c6 on a5 and anchor a knight in on c4. Then if he does that, he's got pretty good counterplay because my pawns aren't the strongest either. Okay, so now I was saying queen d1 here. Although let's take a look at it. Rook takes, queen d2, queen takes, knight a5. C4 or b4, knight c4, knight takes, bishop takes, pawn takes. He's got double pawns, but I'm not sure if I can win that. Not sure if I can win that at all. I've got to try to play for c5, and the way to do that is to get my queen on the g1 a7 diagonal, which means e3. So the only way to get there is to allow him to trade rooks, giving me control of the file. And if he wants to trade queens, I'll trade, and his knight gets a little displaced. So queen d1 is the move here. If knight c4, I can rip it, and with more pieces on the board, rather than king and pawn ending, I think that pawn will prove to be a thorn in his side. But you know, he may be holding on here too. I got a little advantage, but I've got to work to get the point. And you know, whether he's 1396 strength or 1800 strength, I don't know. He just joined the Simul list today, and I treat everybody the same. I've had very low rated players take me down to an ending virtually dead even, and I have to outplay them. That's one of the things about this system. You don't get much, okay? You don't. But I'm used to playing it, so I'm used to milking a tiny advantage, and I'm getting more experience with it. It's one of the rare cases where I actually have the bishop against the knight in the ending. So I'm going to try to follow general in-game principles and go from there. Now, nothing is protecting my pawn on e4 at the moment. Nothing is attacking it either. So that's okay. The Simul is now just over 2 hours old. One game left. And it's going to go from there. So he's... Now, if you think about his time, if the game were to go 40 moves, how much... let's talk about that. He's got to make 16 moves in 23 minutes, and he gets 8 minutes back. So he's got just under a 2 minute per move average. That's because he's taken more than the normal amount of time. I need to charge my iPhone. I just realized I didn't have it plugged in. And if you have an iPhone, you know these things, and you don't put it on standby or whatever, they just suck the juice right out of them. So I'm going to turn it off where it'll charge faster. Plug it in. It's 27% charged. It should be 100% by the end of this game very quick. If it rings, I'll hear it. Fortunately, I don't get a lot of phone calls, although several videos I've been getting phone calls. Hi, can you teach a group class on this day? Hello, I want to schedule a lesson. Hello, would you consider making some videos of my games for me? How much? What do you want? I mean, get all kinds of calls, and these have been put on some of my videos. One guy even called me on Skype and said, well, you're on Skype, or you're going to be on YouTube, you're going to be famous. You want to continue? Yeah, he wanted to continue. Okay, So white's got a very small advantage here, trying to nurse it. I shouldn't lose. One nice thing about this position, I shouldn't lose this against the grandmaster. Now I could, but that's what I like about this system. If you play it right, the great players aren't going to beat you. You know, you're not going to beat the weaker players if they play it right, but the better players aren't going to beat you either. So if you're looking for a draw against a better player, this opening is for you. How did all this start? Well, let's see. I started my video lessons program just over 2 years ago, and made several videos, and then decided to make the program just 12 videos. Well, the 12th hasn't come out yet. It's still under construction. I say I will get to it. Okay, let's not talk about that. But video 5, I was suggesting openings, and I say, what do you do if you're black? And my recommendation, I didn't try to teach any of my openings, although I've made them available, like the Nimzovich and Chigorin defenses. I said, play what you're used to playing and keep playing it. That was my advice with black, and that's what you should do. Keep playing your defense, and it's up to you if you when and if you want to learn a new one. And what to do with white? Well, I showed ways, if you're an E4 player, how to get black out of his book. Now, each one of those systems was dead spot on even, but it took black out of all his preparations, and I did some with the D4 move. And I said, oh, how about this, the King's Indian attack? And I just started playing it so that I could teach it, and so you could see how to do it. And got hundreds of games with it, a whole bunch of correspondence games. They call it online or turn-based. Chess.com, you need to change it to correspondence chess, okay? It's clever to have a name, a turn-based, but it's correspondence chess. We want people to slow down. They think it's a substitute for over the board, and they take 10 seconds on a move and finish the game in 2 days and wonder why they lost. They're not learning anything. And they're dissatisfied members because they're not learning anything and they don't renew their diamond. There you go, ha 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 ha. Okay, I think I know it all. No, I don't. I know some, but not everything. But anyway, I got a lot of games in turn-based. I've got all these simuls. I'm using it. The simuls have been going on since early April. And the simuls I was playing last year, there's a bunch of them there. And there's a lot of videos of me playing this, explaining the ideas. And then live chess, I've got games in, you know, you can find the game scores in there, and get a video too. It's a perfectly good and logical system. Okay, so I hated to have to play E3 and weaken my pawn structure a little bit, but back to this game, I said he had just under 2 minutes a move, and he spent 5 minutes since I said that. So he's going to make 16 moves. He gets 8 minutes back. 16 moves in 27 minutes. So he's definitely under 2 minutes a move pace now. And if he does consume all of his time, he's going to be down to a 30-second increment every move. Now, it's usually not fatal if you down to a 30-second increment. You can usually play a good move, but you just don't have the luxury of a 4 or 5 minute sit when you really need it. But still, it's good to take his time. And I think if we go into an ending, this will help him speed up. But the question is, how much time is he going to have left when we reach 40 moves? Okay, played there. Interesting. Okay, so he's got some pressure on D2, or B2, I should say. Okay. I can play C4 here. That weakens D4. We can't really go in there. And if he takes, I've split up his pawns, activated my bishop, and pressuring. Oh, what's this thing doing? Dimmed out on me. Don't do this. Okay. Sometimes the computer sits for a while. It goes into screensaver mode or something. Or, oh, you know what? I think it is. That's because when I brought it back, I didn't plug it in. I've got plenty of juice. I'm not running out of power. But when I operate it, I I keep the adapter plugged in, so now it's a lot brighter. Yeah, that was just using up its reserves. So c4 kind of repairs my pawns a little bit, because then the b pawn could advance, although it can't with the knight in the way. But c4 threatens to win a pawn with pawn takes, bishop takes, plus fork a pair of his knights. If he pushes by with b4, I can take it, I think. See, I'm just looking at the fact the knight could be overworked. c4, b4, rook takes, queen takes. Yeah, not sure if it's overworked or not. Let's see. Of course, another interesting move is to play rook. No, can't play rook d5. He grabs on b2. He is threatening knight takes b2. So maybe c4 doesn't work. c4 knight takes b2. Rook takes b2 is not allowed. Let's see. Once again, he's keeping out of c5. I can go back to my idea of queen e2. To get to e3. Queen e2. And if rook takes d2, I take with the queen. And if he plays queen d6, if I trade it, I'm going to pitch the pawn on b2, but I can just keep the queen on the board. And he can't really do anything with his queen. Could he play, if queen e2, can he play queen e6? Is that troublesome? Probably not. I hate to put the queen back on c2. Trying to get it to the e3 square if I can. Queen e2 and we'll wait developments. Okay, so I'm not worried about him losing on time. But you do think of these things when you're short on time. Now, I'm not short of time. If anyone's guilty of playing too quick, it's me. Look at what I've spent, and I didn't check the other games. I've lost 42 minutes on my clock and gained 13 back, so I've spent 55 minutes on 26 moves. So I'm moving just over a 2-minute move pace, but I'm also losing time when I'm playing the other games. And like I say, if you want to win a game against me, if just winning the game matters, play quick. Then what can happen is I can get in pretty bad time pressure. If I have a lot of games going, that will happen. But the drawback with that strategy is that when you play quick, you're not playing your best moves. And if you make a slip, I'm gonna get a stranglehold and not give in. Okay, so that's the first drawback. Now, what if he plays queen e6 here? I can always bring the knight back to c1, and then I'm covering entry points for his queen. And it's still pretty much even. It looks like he's playing well. Another way to beat me is to turn a chess engine on. I've had 4 people banned for doing that, and there's at least 3 others that haven't been banned yet. If you want to beat me that way, go ahead. Fine, I don't care. But the whole idea is to give you what Kappa A is doing here. He's getting a long game of it with intense practice, because if you want to get good at chess, move up, whether you make master or not, that's, I hope you do, but you want to get good at chess, when you get above a 1600 strength, you can expect these long games, because you'll be playing players 17, 18, 19, 2000, and they take their time. And if you don't take yours, you're toast. Okay? So might as well get used to it. So this gives everyone one practice game with me, and then you'll have to find other strong players to play, but they're available. It's called entering a chess club, going to a weekend tournament. Well, that costs money. Well, so what? Chess costs money if you want to get a title. I mean, there's even FIDE players that purchase their own FIDE title. Their national federation won't foot the bill, so they do. And so then I guess the advantage of that is you get a lifetime free. They can get a lifetime free membership on chess.com with their FIDE title. But like I say, I'm not too worried about his time, except that he will come to a point where he won't be able to build up time unless the position really simplifies. So, you know, you get down to if we get down to a minor piece ending, if the queens and the rooks come off, he should be able to rattle off a few simple moves, things like king f8 to e7 to d6, maybe make a move like f6, wiggle waggle a knight back and forth or something to gain some time on the clock. He could, you know, if you can get 10 moves played in 10 seconds, that gives him an extra 5 minutes, but he's not going to build up a whole lot of time. And so my goal is to try to find a position some point where he doesn't have a lot of time to solve the situation. Okay, so he took, I take with the queen. Okay, now my queen is guarding b2, nothing is guarding the knight on b3, but I'm not worried about that. I might play queen d6 here, in which case I play queen c2. And he can't penetrate with his queen. He played queen e6 rather than queen c6. Okay, so now he's on my knight. I can play queen c2. I can play c4. That's an interesting move. c4, although I'm not... Let's see. c4. What about c4? Pawn takes. Gives him a whole bunch of weak pawns, but I don't have a good square for my knight. Queen c2. And I plan knight d2 and keep the hatches battened down. Okay, goes queen c2. So using the imaginary 40 moves time control for the pace, because there's no second time control thrown in. If this was a real life tournament, he would get some bonus time added at move 40, be it 30 minutes or an hour, but that's a lot of time and can make the difference. Now, I'm able to play a time control 40 moves in 2 hours and then sudden death in 1 hour. That means, and then you get a delay 5. That means no game is going to last much over 6 hours. That's assume you just keep playing and that 5-second delay adds up. And I've had games go longer than that. You'd be surprised. You know, I've had games the club closed and you had to adjourn. You weren't allowed to stay any longer. Now, don't necessarily want to play knight d2. It might allow a queen a2, but I could play a move like knight c1 and that keeps his queen from penetrating, and then I can evict that knight. Just have to like slowly play this one by ear. But on a pace, he still needs to make 13 moves to reach the imaginary 40 moves, and he's only going to get 6.5 minutes back. So 13 moves in just over 20 minutes. He's still got over a minute a move, but if he keeps taking over a minute a move, it's going to come down to where he's playing off the increment. And that can be a good or a bad thing, playing off the increment. You can never, if you either have to build up time or use your full 30 seconds every move and make sure you play the right move. It could cause you to rush a move. Time is a part of chess. Down blitz chess and bullet chess, time is a major part. More so in bullet than in blitz. Usually, if you have a winning position in a 3-minute game, you can simplify the game, and as long as you can move that mouse quick and use the pre-move and this, that, and the other thing, you can administer a checkmate. But it can be where you can't make a comeback. I've been in situations where I've played like 5 minutes and I had horrible lag, and even though I was moving quick, I was losing 3-4 seconds on my clock. There was a piece up, and I couldn't, against the international master, and I couldn't get the pieces off to convert the ending a piece ahead, and game lost. Okay, so now his knight went there. I'm happy about that because I don't see where it's going next. I always trace paths with pieces. So he's not going to f5 and d5, so it leaves c8. He's trying to put it on b6. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to drive his knight on a4 out of there. It's a little bit of a pain. So the first step is to play knight c1, and knight c1 plans b3, driving the knight out. That's the first step. I would like to play to d2, but that allows queen a2. So first step is I'm going to evict his knight. And I might even be considering c4 at some point coming in. Could have considered it here. I did move kind of quick. c4. Okay, who's trying to chat with me? Okay, somebody I played already. Okay, I could have considered c4 there. Well, one thing I didn't like about it was weakens d4, and I have to go for Okay, so now he played c5. Okay, so now I kick his knight out. Okay, now his knight's kicked. Now one drawback with c5 is it's given me the d5 square. For what it's worth, now he's certainly covering d5. Okay, so he's got to make 10 moves in 18 minutes. He's got plenty of time. Okay, want to know if I was going to post the video of Simul tonight. Yeah, eventually I still have this game going. So, is his plan to push b4? My knight kind of don't like my knight. Looking at b4, that gives him back a4 though. But he may take, and I can take with the b pawn. He may push by, and I kind of like it if he pushes by. Because I can methodically redeploy things here. Let's see. b4, c4, knight e2, king g2, knight g1, knight f3. Wait, knight G1, no, knight E2, knight G1, knight F3, knight H2, knight G4, knight E3. Wow, that's a long trip. Just to get him to E3. But, you know, I can let the knight back into A4. That's not so much of a problem. The question is, what's he threatening? Anything I should worry about? I say the answer is no. If he's going to play C4, let him do it on his own. Knight E2 to G1 to F3 to H2 to G4. You can always stop that with H5. But I can go by way of C2. Or no, get knight E2 to G1 to F3 to E1. Move the queen to C2. Now, I'm not going to move my pawns and give them a chance to occupy. I'm going to make a little, what they call prophylactic move, and guard the pawn on H3 with my king. Now, the question is, will he try to open up lines over here? I don't think he can do that. So I'm just going to make a little safe move, king G2, and let him show me what he's got. Okay, stop static, a little feedback. He left the chat. Okay, so video is now 2 hours old. This game is, I think it was the first one I started. Yeah, he was on spot. It was the first one I started. So this game is 2.5 hours old. Not worried about his time pressure at all. I'm going to play the board. I have plenty of time to stop and figure things out. So what will he do here? I'm going to start moving my knight around very shortly. That knight's going to start a tour. Okay, he played there. Now I play B4. Now he no longer has C4. He's got his knight to A4, but I don't think it does him much good getting that knight into A4. Okay, so I'm trying to get my knight to E3 because that's the only place where it starts doing something. Of course, I can start looking for other plans too. If the knight on B6 goes to A4, he can back it up with the knight on B6. I suppose he could do that. If it runs away, I can play A4 and either push on to A5 or liquidate and try to use the A file. Let's see. He's got to make 9 moves. He gets 4.5 minutes. He's got 16 minutes. He's still close to 2 minutes a move. He's fine, but he's not going to have close to 2 minutes a move much longer because every time he takes over 30 seconds a move, it comes down. But I don't really try to preoccupy myself with how much time my opponent has. I'm trying to play the board too. My pawns on A3 and C3 are weak. He can't attack the pawn on A3. He can attack the pawn on C3. Okay, put his knight there. Now his knight's not really threatening anything. And I was talking about maneuvering my knight around. What if instead I maneuver my bishop around? Where's that knight going? Is he trying to play A5? Well, we'll let him. What if I play bishop E2 with the idea bishop D1 so that if his knight does go to A4, I snatch it off? And here I keep him guessing if I'm going to play my bishop to G4. Can he get a knight to D3? No, because he doesn't have any access squares. c5 is not accessible, e5 is occupied, f4 I control. Okay, so I have time before I do my knight maneuver to improve the position of my bishop. So I'm going to do that. Now maybe I'm threatening bishop g4. If f5, pawn takes, and I win a pawn. Hooray! So keep him guessing, inviting him to put a pawn on h4, or h5 rather. And then I might even consider playing h4 myself, just to fix a pawn on the opposite color of my bishop. I might consider a move like f4 at some point here, trying to open up the game. But here I'm trying to get the queen onto the d file. I can always redeploy the knight. I think if I put the bishop on d1, my knight's free to run, and I'm keeping him out of a4. I'd still like to get my queen to e3. That might not be possible if there's a queen exchange offered on the d file and my bishop goes to d1. I can't put my queen on a3 because d1 would hang. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it's good to think these things through before you go there. Let's see. So he's got to play 8 moves. He gets 4 minutes back, 14.5 minutes for 8 moves. He's still just under 2 minutes a move. He's doing fine. It's when it gets under a minute a move that things are going to be a little tighter. But he's got to eat some time off his clock before that happens. But that's starting to happen. Okay, he played a5, so I don't mind that. That's going to maybe give me the e file. Now, what if I put my bishop on g4? Is that worth anything? Bishop g4. Queen d6, queen d1. If he takes my queen takes. My bishop takes. I'm covering a4, so his knight can't get in there. Although it could, I would just take it. He might get double pawns, but I think he can't advance his pawn up the board. So, first step, bishop g4. Now, if queen d6, I play queen d1. And queen takes, I play bishop takes. Then I figure out how to maneuver my knight. Okay, bishop g4 it is. Can he play f5? I play pawn takes. He gets a nuisance check. Then bishop f3, and he's in trouble. Okay, bishop g4. I've got the bishop trying to use it to the best of my ability. Also trying to figure out a way to get my knight active. Of course, then I can go to e2 eventually, and I could push for f4. He plays f6. I trade. It might give him a isolated e pawn that I could tie him down to. But then I don't get many access points for my king. King can't ever get into d4, and that just leaves the G and the H files for the king to penetrate on. So I'm not really sure I want to play f4 and allow f6 and trade pawns. Here I'm trying to trade queens and get my bishop to where I want on a1, where his knight won't be able to assist. Okay, so he did play there. Now we offer the queen trade, and if he takes, my bishop's covering a4. And he only has to make 6 moves in 10 minutes plus 3 minutes. He's over 2 minutes a move again. See, he's fine. I was saying when the game ended up closing in on the ending, the moves will come a little quicker. The increments certainly make a big difference. When I was playing tournament chess with the old analog digital clocks, there's no increment. The minute hand, every hour, it touches the little thing they call the flag, and it raises it up, and when the clock hits the hour, it raises it up and it makes the flag fall. You've all seen it. If you haven't, you're missing something. You need to search for it. You'll find it. Okay, now I got A4 covered. Can I ever get to C5? I've been wanting to get there the whole game. Yeah. But anyway, you couldn't get time back on your clock. It just kept getting closer and closer. But you knew that you had to make your 40 moves or by that time. Now, some tournaments started running events like 50 moves in 2 hours. That gets a little crazy. What basically that does is it assures most games are done by the 4-hour mark. Because I was saying a good percentage of the games end at move 40, well, a whole lot more end at move 50. Usually, though, by move 40, you know who's going to win a game. So it's unclear exactly what's going to happen here. But I've got the hatches battened down on the queen side. He can't attack my weakness on c3 at all. I mean, he can put the knight on he can take pawns and put the knight on a4, and I take it, and he gets a passed pawn, but that pawn's not going anywhere. At least the way I calculate it. And plus, he's weakening his pawn on c4. So I'm happy if he pushes a4, and then I just have to make sure there's no later sacrifice on b4 that all of a sudden one of those pawns sneaks through. Okay. He's using his time wisely. Okay, that's what I thought I would do. Now I take that with the b pawn. And we're almost at the move 40 where I said usually the outcome is determined at move 40. Although I don't think this one, we can clearly say win, loss, or draw at move 40. So it's going to go on. The fight's going to go on here. And just have to wait and see what happens. So my next step is to activate my knight. I've got the bishop where I want it, at least right now. And if he moves his knight on b6, my bishop is free to run, and it may just very well do that. I could also transfer my king. Oh, I don't think you can do that move. That's going to weaken c4. Okay, so I'm just going to take it and blockade your pawns. Okay, now if you take the pawn on b4, your pawns won't go through on their own. So my first step is to send my king over to free my knight on c1 so that it can pressure that pawn on c4. So king f3 is the first move. Okay. So now here's an interesting thing. How do you evaluate a knight and pawn ending? Well, there's a very interesting rule. It works almost every case. I don't think it's going to work here. The way you evaluate a knight and pawn ending is you take the knights off in your mind, and you say, who wins the king in pawn ending? And if you can tell who wins the king on pawn ending, you can tell who wins the knight on pawn ending. And why is this true? Why is this rule mostly true? It's because knights don't lose tempos. But here, if you take the knights off, clearly black wins. There's no stopping that pawn on a4. Now here my goal is transfer the king over to a3 and win that pawn, and then start working on the pawn on c4. Can he get his king over in time? That's a good question. I haven't really calculated out. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get there first. Or wait, does he get there first? Is his move 1? Okay, you know, it's you can count. There's 2 ways to calculate. Let me go through these so you understand them. You can say, I go here, I go to E3, he goes to F8. I go to D2, he goes to E8. I go to C2, he goes to D8. I go to B2, he goes to C7. I go to A3, he goes to B5. I go to A4. Well, that's the old-fashioned way. The other way is to count. 1. King E3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And his way, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right now he's cleared C6. His king's closer. He's trying to pressure B5, but that won't help him, I don't think. My king will come closer. And I gotta make sure there's no sacrifice. My king will safely get over to C2, and then I'll bring my knight to E2, and he's gonna start working on getting into E3, I think. But let's take care of that business first. Okay, we've made 40 moves. See, just like that, we made the magic 40 moves. So now, for the rest of the game, he's got 30 seconds added to his clock every move. So he does have a good amount of time on his clock. He didn't get down. He's not down to playing on the increment yet. But I think I'm getting closer to forcing a win now, and there will come a time when he has to stop and take a lot of time trying to. You'll see. It happens. When I'm losing a game and my opponent is gradually squeezing the life out of me, I look at the position and I see this move doesn't work, and I analyze another move and I see it doesn't work, and I look up at the clock and a few minutes have passed and I start looking for another move and I see it doesn't work, and I think I'm lost. 3 moves didn't work, let's look for something else, and before you know it, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes come off your clock, and you still discover you're lost. And you either resign or you play the one that you think gives you the best chance to hold. But by then, a lot of times come off your clock, and that's what's going to happen to him here. He's going to see a lot of time evaporating because right now he sees. I could play knight e3 here and pressure e4, but I can play f3. Then where does this knight go? Right now, my king's. I'm threatening to spring my knight loose and find a way to attack his weaknesses. Knight e2 to g1 to f3, eventually to d2, and might have to put his knight on b6 to try to defend both those. It might still be a defense here. I haven't worked it out to the T. Okay, I think that's a mistake because I think I'm gonna get a critical tempo on a pawn here in a bit. Okay, so first step, take the pawn. See, my knight's going to be hopping around, and matter of fact, let's see, do I want to start it now or do I want to put the king on c2 first? Let's see, knight e2 first. Okay, there's a reason for it. Knight e2, if he runs his pawn, king c2, a2, king there, knight takes c3, my knight takes. He might get the pawn. Question is he going to try? I don't want to outwit myself, but I want to be able, when the knight goes through a pivot point of f3, I want to do that with tempo. So the first step is just bring the king closer, and then I can start maneuvering my knight. So He's holding on pretty well, but he's got a lot of weak pawns. A4, C4, E5, F5. My king is batting down the hatches, so to speak, on the queen side, and my knight's ready to run. And it's going to E2 next. And it's going to find its way out. I mean, if it goes to G1, it can play E4. Okay, first step, get the knight here. Now if he plays E4 now, my knight comes into F4, and that's a tremendous square for it. It's only a matter of time before he activated his king. Let's see, so knight G1, he might play E4, but then my knight goes back to E2, and it's going to occupy F4. And when it gets to F3, it's with tempo. So let's see, knight F. Is it really with tempo? Maybe. We'll see. Maybe I should think about getting no, I don't want to go to B2 yet. Don't want A3 to be with a check. I might have a possibility of going to F3 and G5 even. But now the idea is stuff like knight F3 and knight D2. Then it might follow up with knight B1, king B2, and knight A3. The game's, it's still a game. I have plenty of time. If I need to stop and work things out, and I'm guilty of moving too quick, but I'm just having fun, I say these are kind of like target practice for me in a way. I don't care if you guys beat me. I don't care if you guys draw me. I don't have that big of an ego to where I have to win every game. I don't care. If I miss, okay, now he's trying to get a pass pawn, but in the process he's creating weaknesses. So where did my knight come from? It came from E2. I need to take a walk again. So we're going to go back outside and it's got to be cooling down. Let's see. And I got to remind myself to plug this thing back in when I come back. So now it's time. Maybe I should take some time. I've got 47 minutes on the clock. I don't care if he takes time. I'm not counting on him to lose this game on time. He's, after all, he's got a 30-second increment. It's not like when you're sudden death in a blitz or bullet game, or the old sudden death time control where you didn't have a delay and you're playing with an analog clock and your time runs out, your game over, the flag falls, game over. You don't eventually run out of time. You technically have an infinite amount of time with an increment, although the 15-move rule eventually is going to come in and rear its ugly head. Okay, so my knight came from E2, so I don't want to take it back. If I go to F3, he can get a pass pawn. Don't really want him to have a pass pawn. Although in a way I can't stop it. I can take on G4 or F4, then play knight F3. That takes let's see, I calculate this out. Pawn takes, knight F3. That takes E5 from his king. The threat is to play knight D2. And from D2, I can go to B1. No. What's happening here? I can take it and attack it with the knight back to e2, and he'll just bring his king up. And then where do I go? So g4 gives me the chance to maybe get my own pass pawn at some time. He'll play e4. Now he's trying to get another pass pawn. But, you know, I've got him covered. Not quite sure on this one. Well, I got plenty of time to try to figure it out. Maybe I should take my time and get the practice here, because, you know, suppose I was playing this game in the last round against for a prize, and a draw hurts my prize substantially. Oh, there went dim. Come on back. Okay. Now I gotta plug this back in. Don't really know what I want to do here. I'm not at any kind of a disadvantage. The only question is, how do I get to an advantage? Knight f3, e4, knight d2, e3, pawn takes e3, pawn takes g3, and that pawn on g3 is a pain in the rear end. Wow. I'm trying to get a win out of this because I think his pawn structure is weaker than mine. Maybe now we can take that rule. Take the pawns off, or I'm sorry, take the knights off. Who wins? Well, if I play pawn takes, if we take the knights off, I do win, because he can't defend a4 in time. But that, in a way, that's not a fair judgment, because earlier I was losing because I couldn't stop the a-pawn. So, don't really know what I want to do here. Just have to stare at this position, but I don't just stare. I share what I think. There, I've got the door shut and locked. And now we go back and we plug this laptop back in. Oh, there goes my mouse. Oops, almost dumped the computer. Okay. If you heard a little dingling there, and something popped up, probably hit the mouse touchpad. I don't know how people can play on use those touchpads. They're just horrible. Anyway, let's get rid of that menu. Okay, that menu is gone. So what do I want to do here? You got me. I have no clue what I want to do here. I have no clue in the world what I want to do here. I know I can't lose if I take his pawn. There are some positions I can actually lose this thing, but again, I'm trying to find a win. You know, you put yourself in a simulation. I need a win here to increase my standing in the tournament or winning of a prize or whatever it takes. I can, you know, g4 is awful tempting, but I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to use those outside pawns, but they could be. And if he does get a pass pawn, it's going to be in the vicinity of my knight. My gut instinct says the way to play for a win is g4, but I was thinking of that earlier and thinking that eventually maybe his king gets active and penetrates into f4, but that could be okay, unless he wins both my kingside pawns, and as a result, the h pawn becomes passed and a threat. The only question is, what can I do with? Can I be collecting his queenside pawns and getting my own threat with my own pawn? You know, this is certainly not easy. I don't know what to do here. I'm just have to figure it out. and that's why it's good practice. Even if I pick the wrong plan, that's all right. If I don't win a game I could have, next time I'll learn more about the knight innings. My instinct said he couldn't put the knight on a4 and let me take it. That's why I planned to get the bishop where I did. And I've got the king as optimally placed as he can be. The knight's trying to remaneuver because it was a crummy knight, became a crummy knight, and got to figure this thing out. So, what are my candidate moves? That's one way to look at it. I don't think I can give him another pass pawn. G4. I mean, there's got to consider him running that pawn. Then he can sack A3. You know, at some point, knight F3. That's the idea. Get the knight into play. But when he gets that pawn to A2, and I play king B2, he can play knight takes C3, and I can't take the silly knight. No, and the problem with G4 is I think eventually he gets his king to F4 and swoops in and gets both my H and G pawn. His king is starting to get active. I don't think I can lose with pawn takes F4. I don't think I can lose with any other move, but I'm not sure exactly how to win this other than to see how he plays it. And I don't think I can give him a pass pawn. And I'm just going to take his pawn, and he'll take back, and we await where to go next. Okay, so now the question is, do I try to tie his king down to guarding the pawn on C4? And I can do that by knight F3. Knight F3 also threatens a knight G5 check. And I can play king D5, and I can tie his king down with knight D2. You know, got to keep in mind that possibility of him running the pawn down to A2 and sacking on C3. Yeah. Stop making static. Stupid headphones. Okay, let's see. And go back to E2. Invite that pawn to advance. F3, knight G1. Wins the pawn, right? Or does he do that stupid A3 trick? I gotta watch out for that. A3, king B2. See, it's the one reason I don't want to go put my king on B2. A3 is with check. And I can't, well, I can go to A2. He takes on C3, I take on A3. I'm liking knight E2 again. That ties his king down, I think. He has to guard it. Now his king's tied down. But this king's threatening to penetrate into E4. Ugh. Play F3 and keep him out. He goes after my H pawn. I have a feeling he has adequate resources. His king got active on me. Hmm. Hmm. Click, click, click. Knight E2. Oh, I gotta tie his king down to that pawn. Knight E2. That's what I think anyway. Maybe the game's a draw. I mean, I can see ways to do it. Like if king f5, I can play knight d4 check, and we get those. We each get separated passed pawns that they defend themselves. We set up a position where, like for instance, my king goes to c3 and he pushes a pawn to a3, and I can't take the pawn on c4. And I can, in effect, do the same thing with my king. I mean, my pawns. I tie his king down, and king e5. Okay, what's that accomplishing? King e5. He's threatening to go to e4, right? Do I have to play f3 here? It's starting to look like it. Keep him out. Let's see. King, where can't put the knight on g3 to keep him out of e4. So I might have to play f3. That'll keep his king out, right? It goes after my h pawn. Yeah, I definitely have to keep his king out. That stop staticking. Okay, f3. Now I've got his king tied down. That's worth something. If he plays h5, I can play h4. This king has no entry points into the king side. If king f5, he's threatening. If king f5, I can try to evaluate knight d4, see if I can maybe sneak a win out of that. Although he's going to, I think his king can get back. King f5, I can play h4, and that will take his entry points away. Is he ever going to be a point where he's living off the increment? He's getting closer. Yeah, king f5, I can play h4, I'm pretty sure. But then yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Also, I'm tying his knight down to some degree. My knight's guarding the pawn on c3, which is worth something. Because if he moves his knight, my king tries to reroute his knight. My king will come up and snatch the pawn on a4. How's this guy managing to stay me so close? He must not be 1396. Okay, like I said, we don't really pay attention to the ratings. He's got 2.5 minutes to think. Let's go back over this while we're waiting, see how far we can get. b5, that was just ugly. And I'm playing for c5, and he kept finding resources, and I was looking at exchange sacks. They never led anything. Bishop h6 was a good move on his part. I got rid of some stuff. And a3 was made to free my knight. This just made weaknesses. And that was a good move. And it came up. And I thought he'd play queen d6, but now I slide back over. And see, the problem with knight d2 is he has queen a2. So I have to go that way and keep him out of a2. Now I've got him kicked back, and I just play a safe move, and maybe I should take that pawn, play with the separated pawns. I don't know. I didn't think he could do what he did. I planned this thinking that he's got a weak position. Okay, king f5. Now I play h4. Stop his king from coming over. For what it's worth. Okay, now king back to d2, or b2 rather. And I got c3 covered, so I'm hoping for a3 check. Okay, king b2. How do I improve the position here? What can I do with my knight? Let's see. Oh, you know, the dang problem is if my knight's not guarding c3, he gets this a3 check in. Or does he? Let's see. Maybe since my king's on b2, it makes a difference now. Where can my knight penetrate? Well, I can go to d4. I have to evaluate that. G1, C1. Well, it doesn't have a whole lot of scope here. He's covering so many squares on my third rank, like half of them. B3, D3, E3, G3. Knight G1. What about Knight G1 here? Can I get away with that? Knight G1. Trying to find a way to get this knight in the game. Knight G1. There's that damn A3 check. Well, maybe that's okay. King A2, and if he takes on C3, I take on A3. You know what? I'm not threatening to run my silly pawn. His knight's blocking it. What about knight d4 check? Knight d4, knight takes, pawn takes. Knight takes, pawn takes. Am I winning or losing this? King e6. b5, king d6. h5, h6. King c3, a3. King c2, king d5. King c3, king d6. We call it a draw. looks risky, just thinking about it. All kinds of variables can come up. Go away, static. I was going to play a waiting move here. Again, thinking king a2. I'm not sure if I can make any head. Knight d4 just looks risky. Maybe we'll just end this a draw if we just repeat the position. Slide our kings back and forth. Yeah, that's okay. Draw's okay. Guess I can't win it. I've got his king tied in. He can't penetrate on the king side. I've blockaded that. See, I'm a square guy. I take squares from you. That's my idea. He's doing the same to me, but I'm doing it to him. He can't get into d4 or e4 or g4. And he can't approach the h5 pawn without dropping the f4 pawn. And although maybe he could sack it, king g6, knight takes f4, king f5, knight back to e2. He may be able to sack it and survive. I don't think I can win this. My question is, who's going to offer who the draw? Don't lose on time. Knight d6. Okay, I'm going to make, let's just call it a draw, okay? Offer me the draw. Let's get this simul over. I'm happy with the draw. You should be too. I just don't want to play knight d4. It's too complicated. Okay, come on. Offer the draw. You want it, claim it, repeat it, whatever. Video is now 2 hours and 47 minutes old and I'm exhausted. But I'm ready to keep fighting if you don't want the draw. You want to try to win? You got 1 minute and 29 seconds to figure out how to play something different, or I may just claim the draw. Okay, I'm just going to go back, okay? I'm tired. I'm happy with the draw. You should be too. I think I said that already. Man, that knight got misplaced on c1, didn't it? Whew. I think we have a third. Yeah, there was a third. Okay, thanks for playing. I covered most of this already. Let's see. I've gone back over it. Let's see. Like I say, I didn't think he could do this, but I guess he did. And you know, I'm happy my king's getting closer. And I thought that made a weakness. I'm going to get a tempo. I'm really positive, but you know, I thought that was a bad move. Look, I guess it's a good move. You know, g4 is just risky. Knight f3 is risky, so this seems to be safe. And go after the pawn, and he just guards it. And I have to keep you out. I have to keep you out over there. I want to trade my h pawn for your f pawn. Although maybe I could do that. I don't know. I don't remember now. Back here. Yeah, just a draw. Let's go back here to when he played a5. I was wondering if I could. Where's a5? There it is. Almost there. Okay, I played bishop g4. He went back there. I came back with the queen. This was all part of the plan. What if I take here? Well, that exposes a3. Okay, fine. How does he attack a3? He's attacking with his queen. How else does he attack it? The answer is he doesn't. Okay, so now my queen goes to b2. And no, he gets knight a4 in. Yeah. Queen a2. He gets knight a4 in. No, just couldn't take it. Okay, this was... I guess I've wiped out the possibility of looking at knight d4, but that just, I wouldn't be able to analyze it correctly. It looks too shaky. You know, the king's just... It's just another way to repeat the position. And I don't want to run into any tricks that I could accidentally miss. Because I don't want to lose the game. You know, I don't care if I lose, but if I can avoid a loss, I will. But I couldn't find a clear win pushing it because he can just blockade him, and I know that. I've had similar positions before where both sides' kings are stuck, stopping past pawns, and the game's become a draw. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for playing. I'll give another simul before I take off for Vegas. I'll probably do it Wednesday morning around 7 a.m. Pacific time. Be here or be there or be square. And thanks so much. Take care.